What is going on, everybody? King Recon here. Oda is still on break. Our beloved best-selling manga in history is not going to be back for a while. But fear not, because thanks to the individuals that voted on this poll, a massive thank you to everyone who came out and voted for their favorite chapters of the year so far. I can only imagine how difficult it must have been for y'all, because for me, this was insanely difficult, man. From number 10 to number 1, these are all chapters that I just absolutely love. Absolutely loved. This year has been really, really special so far. So the fact that so many of y'all turned out to vote for your favorite chapters so far this year, it was awesome. It was awesome, man. And so we're going to go through those results at the end of the video. Before we get into that, I want to talk about my personal favorites, because this year has been really special. Listen, man. I have like almost the entirety of the 1080s on this list. I think all of them except for one. And that one is like barely out of the top 10. Every single other one of the 1080s is in it. That's how crazy the stretch that we are currently in is, man. It's been so special. Oda has been cooking at the absolute highest level. The highest level. So speaking of that one chapter that I left out, I want to read off a few honorable mentions here. Starting off with 1074. 1074 obviously giving us our first look at Vivi post what was happening all around with the Reverie stuff, and we've been wondering where she was. Was she traveling around with Sabo? Had she already been kidnapped? Like, what had taken place with our beloved Nefeltari Vivi? And to see her at the end of 1074 was a really special moment. Seeing that she was with Wapol and Morgans of all people was really, really crazy. And so just for that moment, I wanted to shout that chapter out. Same with 1083, obviously starting off the Legendary Reverie stretch that we'll be talking about here in the upcoming list for sure. That flashback is really, really special. So we'll definitely be talking about a good portion of that stuff there. So shout out to 1083 for starting it and for giving us some really good information in those chapters. And then my last honorable mention, the one that was the hardest to keep off of the list, was 1077. The Shaka panel was one that stuck with me that entire week leading into the release of the next chapter, and it was devastating. It was devastating because Shaka was my favorite of the Vegapunks. Seeing the way that everything was paneled and the way that everything was constructed leading into that page, the momentum leading into that page from everything else that had been going on in Egghead up until that point, it was just a crazy, crazy chapter. And with all the other incredible shenanigans with Luffy and Zoro and Lucci and Kaku, and the comedy and the epic stuff that was happening there, for that stuff to happen at the very end, after all the crazy tag team action, across the board, and all of the fights on Egghead Island, to finish off the chapter with that, I thought it was just an exceptional chapter, and it sucks that I had to leave it off. But that's how many incredible chapters released this year, man. And so those are my honorable mentions. 1084. I'm sorry, not 1084. That's on the list. Spoiler alert. That's on the list. 1074, 1083, and flipping 1077. And then also a quick shout out to 1072 for having the Kuma flashback, a good section of it there, the weight of memory, and Stussy at the very end as well. I thought that was also a really, really good chapter. And so, see, man, I'm going to just keep naming off all the chapters at this point. So shout out to those honorable mentions for sure, because I know for a fact they're going to become very, very important and prevalent down the line. And so wanted to give a quick shout out to those before we get into the actual list. So starting us off here at number 10. The fact this is only number 10 tells me the quality of the chapters that have released this year, because the end of this chapter gave me something that I've been wanting to see throughout the entire course of the series. When I reached this panel, it was like I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And of course, this is chapter 1073, the reveal of Saint J. Garcia Saturn. This chapter has a lot of greatness in it. We start off leaving off the Stussy stuff, seeing the aftermath to everything that happened there. We cut over to a legendary clash I had been anticipating the entire arc up until this point, in Zoro and Kid Hawk clashing. And Zoro brings up the line of, yo, you're a little less you're a little more human than him. I was like, the Mihawk hype was through the roof. So I was like, yo, this is awesome. This is exactly what we needed. We cut over, we see how Weevil is doing things back in Whitebeard's hometown. We get to see Miss Buckingham Stussy, the actual Miss Buckingham, right, from the Rocks pirates here in over in Whitebeard's town. And then, of course, finishing off the chapter with the insanity of Kizaru transporting Saint J. Garcia Saturn, one of the Gorosei, over to Egghead Island. I mean, the chapter was not only constructed very well, and not only was there a lot of momentum, throughout the entire course of the chapter, but to finish off on such a strong point. I could have sworn when that chapter dropped, it's going to be hard for this not to be on the list, and it barely made it on. It barely made it on. That is how special this year has been so far. So nothing but love to chapter 1073. That chapter was really, really awesome, man. Following that up with another chapter that took place within Egghead Island. This chapter right here, when it dropped, it was one of those, like, I can't believe this is happening chapters. Like, when you're going through it, it's almost surreal to see the narrator have such prevalence once again within this series every time he pops up. But in this particular chapter, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just insane. Of course, I'm talking about chapter 1078. This is another chapter like 1073 that had great momentum going throughout it, right? Seeing the continuation from 1077 and what was happening throughout the course of the entire island in Egghead, and the continuation of all the different battles and sequences and people going from point A to point B or to point C or to point D or whatever the case may be. But to have the narrator pop up in the middle of the chapter and let us know that this would lead into the infamous Egghead incident, one that is going to have events so shocking that the entire world is going to be left basically turned upside down after they receive the news of what took place here. To follow that information up with the reveal of who the traitor is, with a magnificent double-page spread of it being York, and then we all put the pieces together of Greed and the member of the Vegapunks that was the most shady throughout the course of the arc up until this point. It was such a good chapter, but the narration sequence where it was similar to like chapter 903, where you see, like, especially the way the anime did it, where the narrator comes in and you see the reactions are like different cameos from certain characters in the world as the narrator just popping off. I love stuff like that in this series, and we got one of those in that chapter where we get to see all of like the different ships heading out to Egghead, people mobilizing. It was just insane hype, man. And I can't wait, because obviously that was our final chapter in Egghead Island. That was the last time we saw our Straw Hats, and that's what we keep thinking back to when we think about Egghead, right? It's that narration sequence, the fact that York, well, we saw a little bit in the beginning of 1079, but at least for seeing like our Straw Hats and stuff, it was that chapter. So like that narration being the last thing that we were left off on is why it's on this list. It's been the long-lasting impact of it. The fact that we keep referencing this chapter whenever we read the chapters that come after it. Whenever we come back to Egghead, whenever we're going to see this Egghead incident that they're speaking of and they're hyping up, it's like, man, it's going to be insane. And so 1078, a really, really special chapter, and one that is crazy in regards to potentially now seeing the narration that he's been hyping up since chapter 800. It's like, man, it's wild, dude. It's wild. Now from here, from this point to number 1, it was extremely difficult. From 10 and 9 were really difficult too, but from 8 to 1, these are all Santa Hat level plus chapters. I'm not joking around when I say that. These are 8 undeniable Santa Hat level plus chapters to me. And honestly, it made it very difficult to rank because they're all special for their own unique reasons. And it made me think about, okay, is this chapter a little lower because we got certain things later on that maybe lowered down a bit, but then I thought about the initial chapter reading experience, how awesome it was, but then I thought about the legacy stuff and like, okay, how I felt about it since then, especially with the stuff that came place after. So it was just so difficult. It was so difficult, man. It really, really was. So starting us off here, I can't believe this is down to number 8. When this chapter dropped, I was like, this is bare minimum. This is going to be bare minimum top 3 for me at the end of the year. It's just, the character that's in here, it's undeniable. The fact that this is only at number 8 for me, tells me how special this year has been. And I'm telling you right now, in some me flipping quarter, this chapter is in my top 5. This chapter is in my top 5. That's how much I love this chapter. And it's like the chapter barely, if we're keeping it in terms of like from a structure standpoint, in terms of what actually takes place, not a lot happens in this chapter. And you only follow 2 different perspectives within this chapter. But by the Flag Lords, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. So this chapter at number 8 is 1076. Chapter 1076, you already know where I'm going with this. The chapter starts off with Luffy and Lucci. Luffy going into Gear 4, mind you. Gear 4, something I never thought I would see again. Going into G4 with Rob Lucci, tag team attack. Then Zoro and Kaku do a tag team attack. Does the chapter stop there in terms of hype? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We get our first look at Elbaf. Our first look at Elbaf, Vicky the Viking. Why is this chapter not higher on my list? Oh, Vicky the Viking. We cut over and we see the man himself, dog. The man himself. Red-haired Shakes. Oh, a massive dish of sake. All right, it's a massive cup. We get this magnificent double-page spread of Dory and Broggy in the back with all the red-haired pirates. One of my favorite double-page spreads. It is so, so good. So good, man. Leading into it, red-haired pirates hype. It's just seeing them interacting with the people here. It was glorious. It was glorious. They're finishing off the chapter with Kid being like, man, we last time we couldn't even get to Red-Haired himself. And now we're gonna have the opportunity to potentially get to him. Nah. Kid was like, nah, we're gonna get to him. Either I'm gonna die trying or we're gonna get to him. And we know how that turned out. But listen, finishing off that chapter, I could have sworn that we were not going to get an answer to that for quite some time. And if we did not get an answer to that for quite some time, this chapter would probably be way, way higher. But because we didn't get an answer to it, that chapter, of course, is going to be extremely high on my list. You already know. The chapter that follows this, the chapter that follows the events of 1076, you already know how I feel about that chapter. So, this one was really hard to rank. It was hard to rank because the other chapters we've gotten so far this year, some of them were either extremely surprising in what they gave us, and that propelled them to be higher than this, or some was stuff that we've been waiting to see for so long, and it exceeded expectations, right? So it was super, super difficult. But this chapter, oh man, I loved every second of it. It was a very, very enjoyable experience, and one that obviously I have very fond memories of that first initial read-through. Oh man, it was so much fun. So 1076 comes in here at number 8. Now coming in at number 7 is a chapter that was even more difficult to rank than 1076. Because this one, the following 3, they're so special in their own way that it was very difficult to rank because they all made me feel something different coming out of them, right? And this one, and of course, they all represent a different aspect of One Piece that makes it so special. This chapter number 7 finally gave us a piece of information that we've been waiting to see for a very long time. And it also gave us an interaction that we were all extremely excited to see, and it delivered. And of course, a very shocking finale. I'm talking about chapter 1081. This chapter, just like 1076, at the blink of an eye. Tomorrow it could be easily top 5 for me because of how good it is. This chapter explores Kuzan joining the Blackbeard Pirates. Obviously, as a massive fan of Blackbeard, the same way I'm a massive fan of Shanks, it automatically is going to have that level of it raised, right? But in this chapter, seeing how the ideology of Blackbeard's crew is explored through their interactions, seeing Kuzan feel remorse and guilt still for what happened back in Ohara. Speaking of the events with Akainu, with Sakazuki, in like a comedic type of light, trying to make light of the situation at hand. But then seeing the momentum, right, where we start off the chapter, Garp is, being like, man, I just finished doing all that, but guess what? That wasn't me at my best. You feel me? Hibari's following behind Kobe, and all of a sudden Hibari's frozen, and it's insane. It is insane because you already know what that means. Kuzan pops up, flashback time, great stuff there with Blackbeard, the squad. It was handled so well. Then we come back to the present, and we get to see, finally, Aokiji and Garp in a marvelous dope spread, where the two of them, their ideologies clash. We get to see two individuals. One of them, obviously, I'm a big sucker for the student-master dynamic, so having Kuzan saying everything that he said, and then Garp go in, black hole, choke slamming him to the floor, it was just insane. It was absolutely insane, man. And coming off of that reveal that we've been waiting for, like I said, from chapter 720 on the old channel, we had been talking about the possibilities of, Aokiji with the Blackbeard Pirates, and just seeing that come into fruition within a chapter was really special, and especially the way that it was executed. Just so many things to make this series so special is in this chapter. Once again, I think back and I'm like, why isn't this higher in the list? But it's like, that's how crazy this year was, right? But it's just following that up with present day Blackbeard having defeated Law, and then Beppo doing everything that he can, Cocaine Bear style, to save his captain. It was just once again another, just from a structure standpoint, a magnificent chapter. A magnificent chapter, man. It was one of those that when you look back on it and you think about a potential anime adaptation for it, it's like, wow, this is going to be really, really special. Man, finally getting the answers to the Kuzan and Blackbeard stuff. It was just so cool. And of course, even within this arc, we've been getting stuff towards like the cover page of chapter 1064, seeing Aokiji there. And then, of course, seeing him in chapter 1080, right? But then following that up with 1081 and seeing the actual lead up to him joining the Blackbeard Pirates and all that stuff. It was such a good chapter. It was such a good chapter. And like I said, at any given point, it could easily go into the top 5. But these 3 chapters were so hard for me to rank because they all touch upon different strings, right? And this one touched upon the mind string. The string of like, man, this chapter really makes me appreciate Blackbeard more. This chapter really makes me appreciate Kuzan more. This chapter really makes me appreciate Garp more, right? Like, this is just a chapter that makes me appreciate mainly Beppo, right? That makes me appreciate multiple characters more than I already did. And so that's why I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep this at number 7 because the next chapter, number 6, it hit me from an emotional standpoint. This chapter, when I came out of it, though not as strong structurally as 1081, and not as many things happening as 1081, the middle section of this chapter, leading up into almost the very end of it, was some of the most incredible. It is one of those moments that it like it's almost like the moment itself is not necessarily carries the chapter, but it sticks out with you. It sticks out with you as a fan. And of course, I'm referring to chapter 1082 as my number 6 in this magnificent year. That entire Buggy segment, it was really, really funny. Really, I mean, the cross-guild shenanigans were they were on point as always, right? But the middle of that chapter, where we get to finally take a look into Buggy's psyche, get that little flashback sequence with Shanks, understand why the two of them didn't go on the journey together after that, see how he feels about Shanks, and him questioning himself and being like, yo, how in the world could I go out after the One Piece if that guy who's way more promising than me, the man who was supposed to follow Roger's legacy, didn't go after it? Well, then why should I? Do I have any right to do such a thing? And then for him to follow that up and be like, wait, Shanks is moving towards it now too? Blackbeard is moving towards it? Monkey D is moving towards it? I want to go back in on a dream that I let go of from years ago. A dream that I thought was far off and shattered. I'm going to try to put the pieces together today, here and now. I want to become the king of the pirates. It got to me so hard, man. Like, the emotions. Buggy's greatest character moment. It was on full display how magnificent of a character Buggy is, right? Like, we've gotten so many different instances within the series as to why this character is as magnificent as he is, and one of my all-time favorite side characters, not just in One Piece, but in anything in general. He's just a magnificent side character. And anytime he shows up, it always puts a smile on my face for very good reason, right? But in this chapter in particular, we got to see what makes his character so special. And for him to stand up to Mihawk, the world's strongest swordsman, and Crocodile, that dude, stand up to both of them and be like, nah, I'm not listening to y'all today. But let me tell you something. I am going to move up in like swimwear. I'm going to become the king of the pirates. Let's go out and claim it. Let's go out and claim it. The One Piece. And it even left them shook. Like, man, is this really coming from Buggy's mouth? Is he really doing this? Man. And following that up with Sabo being confirmed to not only be alive, but looking as fresh as ever, in the Revolutionary Army, and all of the man, bear, pig, and cow, pig shenanigans, right? It was beautiful, man. This chapter was really awesome. Just the happiness, the emotional moments. It left me coming off of the chapter with like so much both joy and like not only deep appreciation for some of the characters here, but also hitting on those emotional strings that One Piece is most certainly known for. And that's why that's here at number 6. I really love that Buggy moment, man. It's one of my favorite moments, like just moments of this year. The moment is so strong that it's easily could have been in the top 5. And I think the reason why it's not in the top 5, because originally I was thinking about putting this in number 5. But my number 5 was so surprising that I felt like I had to put it there. Coming off of one of the most insane chapters in the entire series, we follow that up with another of the most insane chapters. But in this particular case, we have a chapter dedicated to just one side, to one organization in the world of One Piece. I'm talking about the Marines, man. I'm talking about Sword. My number 5 is chapter 1080. Already leading into this chapter, I was excited to get more from the members of Sword. I couldn't wait to see Kobe again, considering what had happened in chapter 1059. Couldn't wait to see Garp again after the cliffhanger with chapter 1071. I was extremely excited for these events, right? Nothing could have prepared me for the hype and enjoyment that I would receive from these characters in their formal introductions, because we had already seen them at the beginning of Egghead Island, right? Characters like Groose, characters like Hibari, Doll. We had seen these characters earlier on in the arc. But to have their formal introductions here, the way that they were all shown off, was just some of the coolest stuff ever, man. Excuse me. Prince Groose coming out here with a golem was so dope, dog. Hibari. Oh, man, coming out here like she's out here playing Apex or Call of Duty. Yo. Yeah, you want to shoot that up? There's some flowers up in there. I was like, yo. Kobe, man. In this chapter, speaking of Blackbeard, Blackbeard is speaking on so much greatness here. I mean, he's talking about dreams. He's talking about telling Kobe not to, trample on his dreams. Kobe is standing up to Blackbeard in this chapter. Not just Blackbeard. Blackbeard and his entire crew. His entire crew, and Kobe is still like, nah. Not me. Not me. Not me, son. Oh, man. Even Blackbeard had to put respect on his name and be like, yo, I mean, hey, man, listen, if the Marines are really going to throw you away like that, you're going to be a hero one day. It'll be problematic. If they just threw your name away like that, I was like, hey, man, listen, that's Kobe. That's Kobe. This man was running away from the situation at hand and still putting the civilians' lives first. Kobe greatness at its highest extent. But it doesn't stop there. We got sword greatness across the board. Great character interactions. Awesome character introductions. Because once again, even though we already met these characters, having their formal introductions within a sequence like this was so cool. So cool. I came out of this loving each and every single member of Sword. That's what made it so surprising to me, is how much I enjoyed all of the members of Sword. I still can't wait to go back and see them again. It was crazy. Kujaku, Groose, Hibari, more greatness for Kobe. But then the big dog came in at the end and it was over. And I mean that in every sense of the word. The big dog came in, flying on his ship, hitting a Saint Seiya attack. Galaxy Fist, bro. Galaxy Impact, whatever you want to call it. Oh my goodness, dude. And you know what? You know something? I think this is why this might be as high as it is. Because it really is an indication that even if you get spoiled in the chapter, it will never take away from anything. Because like I told you all going into that stream, I got spoiled in chapter 1080, knowing that Garp would be in the chapter. I didn't know in what capacity, obviously. But I knew Garp would be in the chapter because I saw a thumbnail with Garp on it. And I was like, oh, man. So I had an idea. I was like, man, that means Garp might be in this chapter. I didn't know if it would be in a flashback context, in a present-day context. I had no idea. But I did know Garp would be in the chapter. Nothing could have prepared me for what Garp was going to do in the chapter. Garp popping up in a marvelous dopey spread that had the members of Blackbeard Pirates looking at me like, what in the world is going on? Garp comes down with his fist, conquers Coded, and he releases the attack of like, I was going insane, man. That, at the end of that chapter, proved what all of us had known for so many years. Garp is him. Garp is him, and there's a reason why at God Valley, him and Roger did what they did against an individual like Rox and the future Emperors of the Sea in Kaido, Whitebeard, and Big Mom. I mean, bro, Garp. Like, come on, man. Sword greatness. It was just... It's once again proving that this series, you can have one aspect of a chapter spoiled for you, and it won't matter. Because you won't know the how. You won't understand the stuff leading into it. Like, you won't understand the stuff around it. God, man. And like I said, the introduction... of the sword, the formal introduction of seeing all the individuals in the sword again. Kobe, greatness, standing up to Blackbeard, but Garp, son, Garp. It made it so special. It made it so special. I love this chapter, and it's definitely one of those chapters that I can't wait to see animated in multiple different regards, just to see how they handle the sequences with the sword members. But obviously, how they're gonna handle the Galaxy Impact, right? I think it's gonna be crazy. It is gonna be insane. But we have got to the top 4. These chapters were very difficult to rank. These were all sensational. I can honestly say that all 4 of these, if I were to do a favorite chapters in the entire series list, that's like a top 50 favorite chapters in the series, or a top 25, whatever the case may be, all 4 of them are contenders to be on that list. These are 4 of the all-timers. These are insane chapters. Really, really special chapters. And of course, starting us off here at number 4 is one that has that in its chapter number, is chapter 1084, man. Coming off this chapter, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Finally, we stay on the Reverie content, and Cobra pops a few questions that would get anyone killed. Will of D information, our first insight into Lily, Queen Lily of House Nefeltari. The Nefeltari dynasty that reigns so strong. But seeing how he popped that question to the Gorosei was really, you could feel the tension through the pages, man. It was crazy. You could cut it. Anyone could feel such a thing. I can't wait to see how they capture that in the anime. But it was insane. Insane. We continued there, and it just keeps going. And it keeps going. We cut over and we get to see Instant Messenger Sama. And you're like, oh man. Now, granted, it's the first time we had seen Instant Messenger Sama is chapter 1060. So you're coming off the fact that the Lucy incident was the last time we saw this individual, right? But we're in the past right now. We're before the Lucy incident. It's like Instant Messenger Sama still in the spooky flower chamber. Butterflies around. Listening to this conversation take place. As Cobra is talking about Lily and the letter that has been penned down from generation to generation. Then we cut over and we get a magnificent sequence in the plaza of the Holy Land, where Shirahoshi and Charlos, ridiculous stuff is happening there. But the Straw Hat Grand Fleet was not allowing it to happen on their watch, man. And we get a magnificent debate spread of Sai and Leo turning Saint Charlos into the pot of greed. That by itself would propel this chapter into greatness. Outside of the other insanity that took place in it. That by itself was so key, man. It was so key. Any chapter where Charlos gets wrecked is automatically a 10 out of 10 chapter. But when you surround it with this type of context, and I'm not just talking about the context of Emu and Lily and Cobra and Gorosei. I'm talking about the fact that these individuals, knowing what happens to people who strike celestial dragons, but they know who they're under. They feel so protected under Monkey D. They feel so protected under one of the emperors of the sea that they were like, we're doing this because it's right. We're not afraid of y'all. I love that, man. I love it. Because it adds weight to our journey. It adds weight to the journey we've been on since Luffy exited the barrel back at the beginning of the series. It adds weight, man. The fact that now people have so much belief in him that they're willing to do the one thing you should never do in the One Piece verse, which is strike a celestial dragon. They will bring out an admiral and send him to your entire families, bro. They don't play. Sai and Leo said, screw all that. We're under the king. Turning that man into the pot of greed. Oh, man, that was such a satisfying moment, bro. Then you follow that up. Emu walks up and a legendary cliffhanger. Cobra's like, what in the world am I seeing? Lily. Chapter end. I mean, magnificent stuff across the board. Across the board. With lore information over here, with an extremely intense chapter. But also that Sai and Leo scene with Charlos. It was just all around a masterclass in so many different ways, and a great way to continue off of 1083. Now we get into the top 3. These, I'll tell you right now, we have the same top 3 in the poll results and in my own personal list, just in a different order. And man, all 3 of these chapters are special, bro. These are all multiple Santa hats, Jordan jerseys to the max. This is the weekly One Piece experience right here. Is these 3 chapters. Starting us off at number 3. We have the most recent installment, the one that led us into a break, in chapter 1086. You know, reading that page of Instant Messenger Sama saying that it's in close proximity, that's the reason why we're going after Lucia. And we get to see the Gorosei and their names for the first time. That is up there with chapter 1045. The Gear 5, Luffy Toon's shenanigans at their max. Levels of enjoyment of just the page. Because not only was that page extremely hilarious for their names, not only was it extremely hype because of their names and their titles as well. But that is something I had been wanting to see throughout the course of the entire series. It's like, you think back to Jaya, and this is going to be something very prevalent within the next 3 picks, is stuff I've been wanting to see the entire series, and you're actually seeing it. Seeing all of their names in the way that we did, back to back to back to back, was not only so much fun, but it's like their names are so Oda and awesome and hype and hilarious, and it's like, it's perfect. It's perfect, man. We got sniped on stream, but reading the Godhand of Finance section, shout out to Ethan, took me out, and then we had to come back and finish it off, but it was crazy, man. And of course, even outside of that sequence, continuing off from the previous chapter, at 1085, and seeing the aftermath of that, and how the Gorosei were dealing with that and talking to Ibu, and Instant Messenger Sama talking about, yo, it's time to bring out the mother flame, right? And it's time to utilize this thing. And we're all wondering, like, what in the world is he talking about? He's talking about that Uranus thing that was on 1060. And just seeing how, I mean, Imu had so much villainous energy in this chapter that I loved it. I really, really did. Right? Where we had that way, the savagery of like, yo, it's in close proximity. That's the only reason for it. And the Gorosei were like, yes, sir. That's all it is. Like, yo, at first they were questioning it. Once Imu put their foot down, they were like, all right, my bad. Yo, you right. You're right, son. My bad, dog, and me too. My bad. I was talking junk about Imu earlier on the chapter. My bad. All right. My bad. And so, yeah, you could see the consequences of that with the stream getting sniped, right? But you know, coming from that, and of course, going back to the Revolutionary Army, and we got a really nice narration sequence where we got to see multiple different sides of the world all moving, which was really, really cool. Like I talked about earlier with 1078, just to an even higher degree. With the crazy events that took place here. And then when we come back to the Revolutionary Army in present time, and we get to see Ivankov talking about 2 very, very important things, or actually 3. Number 1 being, of course, Imu's actual name coming from one of the original 20 kings, which Cobra was hinting at. But Saint Imu of the Nerona dynasty, that was a massive, massive reveal. Following that up with the ancient weapon, potentially being what we saw in 1060, which is what we were all speculating, that potentially be Uranus, right? And Dragon bringing up the real question that we're all asking is like, why wait to use this until now? You know, and then Vegapunk's involvement in this as well, and now that's up to question. But also, what Ivankov brought up in regards to the idea of the immortality surgery, right? there's certain ways that can be accomplished in the verse, and in order to know that, somebody had to have done it. And so Emu pretty much being confirmed right there to have been around for all this time. I mean, if the dialogue in 1084 and 1085 wasn't already enough to let you know that, then this is most certainly letting us know that. And just to finish off the chapter with, goodness gracious, bro, one of the most shocking final pages. We get to get our first look at the holy knights, man. The gods' knights. Crescent Moon, Saint Figurland Recon. Sitting there with a crescent moon on his head, looking so fire. Figurland name reveal. Still can't believe that's a thing. And he executes Miosgard for doing what he did. What a strong character introduction for someone of that caliber. It's like, man, you want to talk about adding more hype to God Valley, to Shanks and his entire family situation in just one page? Everything made so much more sense after that. The Figurland connection, Shanks throughout the course of the entire story, potential implications for how deep his character is going to go down the line. It's just, his character introduction wasn't just amazing for what it was in the moment, but also for implications and what it could have for later on in the line too. And so it was special stuff. Emu stating that they desire Vivi. It was just, this chapter was the perfect chapter to lead us into a break. And another one of those instances where it easily could have been number one. That's just how great this chapter was. But it's at number 2. All right, I'm sorry, it's at number 3. Now we're going to talk about number 2. Listen, the hardest thing on this list was choosing between 2 and 1. I'm not going to lie. They're both extremely close to my heart. These are the only 2 chapters that I downloaded, or I should say that I screenshotted and took with me after the day after reading the chapter, because I just wanted to reread these chapters while I was out and on the go. These 2 chapters are special, man. These 2 chapters are without question some of my favorite stuff in the entire series. It is insane. This is the stuff you'll live for as fans, man. It's crazy. Yeah, and I can say the same thing obviously for 1086. But man, it's tough. Even now it's tough because they're both so close. They're so close. But coming in number 2, speaking of the Figurland family, let's talk about my boy, man. Let's talk about the man who made me forever reevaluate what the state of my room looks like before I record and or press red on a live stream. Saint Figurland Shanks, ladies and gentlemen. Yo, man, you want to talk about hype, son? It doesn't... This chapter was hype incarnate. This chapter was some of the most insane stuff, man. York starts off the chapter talking to the Seraphim units, and we get to see, how her thought process went into everything that went there. We cut out and zoom out to outside of Egghead, and we see Blackbeard's ship is pulling up. That by itself automatically propelled this chapter to a 10. I was like, excuse me, what? Like, what happened to Law? What happened to the situation over the Garp? Blackbeard's pulling up now. It's like, hold on, what's going on, right? Like, we're still questioning these things, but still, that cliffhanger was so strong for that section of Egghead. That was the last thing we saw of Egghead, was Blackbeard pulling up on his ship. Or at least someone's pulling up on Blackbeard's ship. Someone. Shiryu, Lafitte, someone. Katarina Devon, someone's pulling up on that ship, dog. Blackbeard's ship is pulling up to Egghead Island. And where do we go after that? Elbaf, land of the warriors and giants. We see Eustace Captain Kidd pull out the Spartan laser the same way he did against Big Mom. The moment he pulls it out, Shanks looks behind him like he's just in a movie. He's in a movie theater. Looks up at the screen and for 10 seconds time stops. And he sees the movie before everyone else does. He gets the sneak peek. The sneak peek. The leaks. Shanks is a spoiler reader. He goes out and sees the attack before it's coming. He watches the movie take place before it happens. Kid he doesn't even get a chance to fire the Spartan laser. He pulls up the gun. And Shanks like, not today. Ben Beckman. It's like, hold up. What type of future did you just see? It must be one crazy future. Shanks. Oh, man. He goes from the shore of Elbaf to however far away. Kid was off the shore. And what does he do? The man delivers a divine departure, bro. Roger's attack. That thing put me in tears, bro. It put me in tears. From hype, from excitement, I just couldn't believe we saw a named attack from Shanks. The one character I've been wanting to see more of than any other in this series. One-shots Kid and his crew. The Victoria Punk is no more. Dorian Brugge sent that thing packing. Sadly. Shanks at his rawest. What a magnificent dope spread. And the end of the chapter with the narrator coming in that on this day, just like with the Sabaody thing, Eustace Kid and his pirates and his crew were completely and utterly annihilated by one man. One man pulled up, first time doing something in the series, and he one-shots a man worth $3 billion. Dude, I can't even tell you the amount of times I've reread this chapter. I love this chapter with every fiber of my being. Like I said, the fact that this is not number one, it might be tomorrow. It might be tomorrow. I love this chapter. I do with every fiber of my being, man. It is without question one of my favorite moments in the entire series and one of my favorite chapters. It was just one of the most memorable weekly chapter reading experiences ever. It was such a special time, and I will never forget it for as long as I live, man. It's Shanks doing something. It's Shanks doing Divine Departure. It's him speed blitzing Kid and watching a movie before it happens. It's crazy. It's crazy, man. I still can't believe it. I still can't believe it happened. It was such a special chapter. And as a Shanks fan, obviously, it was a glorious day. It was a glorious day, man. That was a special chapter and one that even now I'm like, how in the world is that going to be animated, right? Like, Toei's going to go all out for that Shanks greatness, as they should. As they should, and I can't wait. I can't wait, man. It's going to be wild. It is going to be insane when we get to that in the anime. And then just seeing the ideology of Shanks' crew. And same thing with how it was in Romance Dawn. Here on full display once again. Like, this is who his character is. And his crew. What they're like as well. It was a great insight into Shanks' character. But also, Divine Departure. Divine Departure, bro. Come on, man. So, that's my number 2, man. And then my number 1, dude. Listen. I'm still not functioning correctly after this chapter. This is what you call an Oda chapter, man. This is One Piece to its just wow. Just wow, man. Of course, we're talking about my number 1, chapter 1085. I still can't believe what happened in this chapter. Instant Messenger Sama spoke more words in this chapter than I think some of the Straw Hats have back in Egghead Island. We got so much insight into the Void Sentry, into the makings of the verse, into Emu as a character, to the hierarchy within the Gorosei, and an Emu. The way that Cobra stood up to Emu. The confirmation and the crazy reveal of Nefeltari D. Lily, which means Nefeltari D. Vivi, man. Sabo is overhearing all this. Cobra gets hit by an arrow that we're like, what in the world is that? That come from Emu, the Gorosei? Where did that come from? Devil's tail, what is it? What is an arrow? Cobra gets pwned. Sabo shows up and does the only other thing that I have seen that I can properly like compare this to is when Luffy popped up against the three admirals in Marineford. In terms of one character completely out of his realm, still going up in like swimwear. Like listen, Luffy at that point in time, of course, was very formidable, but three admirals is too much for anyone, and he was trying to box all three at the same time to save his brother. Sabo pulled up on the 5 elders, on the 5 Gorosei, and the king of the world. Brother, that was one of the most hype scenes I've ever seen in my entire life. He can to the 5 Gorosei, and then he hits that legendary attack against Emu. Emu's like, yo, where did this one come from? Turns into that big ball thing. I mean, bro. Then the following panels just Sabo sitting in front of Cobra, like, yo, if y'all want to try it, let's get it. The shadows are behind him. We're like, what in the world? I'm like, oh, don't say, man, they're mythical Zoans. What are they, man? This is crazy. Sabo and Cobra head out. Really beautiful moment with Sabo and Cobra in regards to Luffy. Rather, that sounds like Then we got that amazing flashback sequence right after the Cobra's like, yo, tell Luffy and Vivi that we share the demonic. And then we got over to a flashback sequence with Ace and Luffy, ASL. And they're talking to Sabo, Sadibo. Man, Cobra's final words. The Poneglyphs were meant to be protected, to lead them into the dawn of the new age. Cobra's just going all up in like swimwear against Emu and the 5 elders. He's like, Sabo, you have to live. Such an emotional scene, man. The anime is gonna have us in tears on our knees. On our knees. God, man, we come off of that legendary sequence. Some of the best stuff in all of One Piece, dude. And then we cut over and we get Wapol, who has seen this entire thing, goes over, and that is how he runs into Vivi. And it's just Gordon and Vivi, CP9 interactions to end it for Wapol. And it's spectacular because Wapol being the first representation of an individual who oppresses his people in such a horrific way in the series, right? In Drum Island, or as a king, right? We had seen it through both the WG and through the Pirates, but a king, a monarch, doing what he does to his people. It was really Drum Island that started that off. And so seeing that individual turn and see something that he can't even fathom, the actual true oppressor of the verse, the individual he can't even begin to understand, right? And for him to be in as much fear as he was that he just runs away, taking Vivi with him. It's like, man, it was just Odom a mastery at its finest. His pen, right in this chapter, this entire stretch it was on fire, but in this one it was a blaze. This one it was a blaze of flat fire and glory. I mean, I love this chapter. It is every page, every moment is so special, so good, so deep, so I love it. I really, really do. For me to put anything above a Shanks chapter of that level is special enough. But this right here is some good stuff, man. It is just an Oda special. This was an Oda special, bro. The Cobra moment with him saying, "We share the D moniker." It is goosebumps. Sabo pulling up on the 5 elders. And evil Brand Box moves! It is peak fiction. It is Goat Raw Fire and Peak. Both this, the Shanks chapter, the Garling chapter, so many of these, Goat Raw Fire and Peak. But this one, man, I think this one might be my favorite chapter of the year so far. That's just, it was so good. I said, I've reread it so many times and it only gets better with every reread. And it just, Emu, man, the Gorosei, what are they? So many questions, so many questions. What a special, special chapter, man. So many different things to make the series special, from its character dynamics to the weird way that Oda does certain things in regards to, creating crazy moments for him to come in and do the classic Oda twist, right? Seeing the reveals through the information, the lore, from the incredible emotional moments, right, to the incredible hype moments, to everything. This chapter just had everything. This chapter had everything that makes One Piece so special in one chapter. And I can't wait for it to be animated, and I hope the anime adaptation does as well of a job as this chapter was, that it has a marvelous adaptation, because it deserves it. This is a really special chapter, and I look forward to seeing how they end up adapting all that material. But that is my top 10, man. It was such a great year so far. I can't wait for Oda to come back and just blow this entire top 10 out of the water, because I'm sure by the time we finish the chapters this year, some, if not most of them, might not even be in the list anymore, just because of where we're headed with the climax of Baguette Island. It's going to be some really, really special stuff. So to end this video off, man, I want to read off the poll results from all of you in for this particular chapter of the year so far, poll for 2023. Starting us off at number 10, we have chapter 1078 that came in with 40 points. Chapter 1073 that came in with 41 points. Chapter 1084 that came in with 71 points. So once again, 10 is 1078 that came in with 40 points. 9 is 1073 that came in with 41 points. 8 is 1084 that came in with 71 points. 7 is chapter 1076 that came in with 77 points. Number 6 is chapter 1082 that came in with 111 points. Number 5 is chapter 1080 with 122 points. Number 4 is chapter 1081 with 179 points. Number 3 is chapter 1086 with 191 points. Number 2 is chapter 1085 with 208 points. And number 1 is chapter 1079 with 233 points, man. What a special year it has been so far. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the best chapter of the year video for what has been a crazy year so far. Looking forward to seeing how our results differ when we get to the end of the year and do the actual chapter of the year results for 2023, because we all know Oda's going to be cooking when he comes back to deliver what is this insane Egghead incident, right, that we've all been building towards. So cannot wait to see it. It is extremely, extremely exciting stuff. What a time to be a fan of this marvelous series, man. And so I will see you all next time. I look forward to seeing what you all think about the results and any additional things that you would like to share in the comments section down below. We will return next week with some more stuff here on the channel to fill in the void that the series left behind, as well as a few surprises down the line. So I will see y'all. Take care. One Piece greatness. What an awesome year it has been so far. And once again, thank you all so much for voting and for continuing to show support on the channel. I really, really appreciate y'all. Take care and have a blessed one.